What is going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Welcome. Today we're going over the classic Recluse SMG with the Master of Arms. Came back out way back in like season 7 or 8, I think, when this first initially dropped. It was an absolute menace inside of the Crucible as well as the PvE side of the game. So this was one of the first weapons, as well as the mountaintop, that was just a menace inside both of the realms. So we're gonna go over all the PvE PvP godfalls for you guys today, giving it a rating as well at the end for the PvE and PvP realms. I personally just want to say before I start, I don't think it is nearly as good as the old version of this weapon. Obviously, they had to nerf Master of Arms because it was too disgusting back in the day, but I do think it is still a very good weapon. So starting us out, we got the old trusty Dusty. This is one of my new favorite origin perks from these brave weapons with Indomitability. So final blows grant us grenade energy when we are on our light subclasses, arc, solar, and void, or melee energy when we are on our darkness subclasses, stasis, as well as that good old strand. So it is a little bit of energy, 5% per those defeats, but ability spam potential of these weapons with our subclasses is just disgusting. Starting us off, PvE. We are going with boss spec on this, since a lot of the enemies in that end game are mini bosses, and bosses gives us that nice 7.77% bungee number, or 8% I round up normally, for that increased damage against them. This thing definitely loves to have this on inside of the PvE realm. As for masterwork on this thing, I personally go with reload. It is a small reload on this thing at only 28, so giving it the reload on this is up to 38, almost 40, so feels just a little bit better. We do obviously have a couple reload perks, subsistence, feeding frenzy, so not too big of an issue. You could throw on range if you're using one of those, but I think overall in most situations reload works best. When we move on to our barrels, two options. Small bore is our first one for PvE, gives us 7 in stability, 7 in range. We got range at 47, stability at 54, and then, like I said, that reload is at 38. The other option you could go with is corkscrew rifling, gives us +5 in all of those, stability, range, and handling, so it decreases a little bit, but we got 45 in range, 52 in stability, 68 in handling, so it is a little bit jack of the trades, if you will, jack of all trades perk. Gives us a little in addition to both of those, but it is only 2 extra really inside of having the small bore, so I like corkscrew a little bit more. Moving on to magazines for this. First off, we got the appended mag, gives us +2 to the magazine, better than the extended because we're not getting -20 to reload, which this thing already sucks at reload speed, so appended is definitely the way to go. The other option is armor piercing rounds, gives us that +5 to range, but also gives us a roughly 5% damage increase against those PvE combatant shields, so it is a nice little bit of extra damage for this weapon, but I think I still like having appended on a little bit more. There's 3 options inside of the third column, with this first 2 kind of going hand in hand, so I guess 4 if you would count them separately, but we got subsistence as one of our perks, giving us that defeating targets partially reloads the magazine from reserves, so you can just continuously fire this thing if you are getting those defeats, so it's about a 17% increase for our SMGs. Now the other option is feeding frenzy, almost the same thing, but when we get those defeats it stacks our reload up, so ×5 is 100 reload speed, so it is very quick. It takes away that stupid only 38 on reload that it has intrinsically, so this is a nice addition, one of those if you want the faster reload or just being able to shoot a little bit longer between feeding frenzy as well as subsistence. The other options that we have, first off, is a threat detector. We get increased reload stability, handling when we are in close proximity to enemies. Sometimes this gets hard to proc, so that's why I went with subsistence and feeding frenzy in the same category. This does give us reload, handling, and stability, but I think I would go with subsistence over threat detector in my opinion. Last option in this third column, we got Repulsor Brace, defeating those void debuff targets. So volatile weaken, grant you an overshield. It's about a 45 HP overshield for 8 seconds. So this has that void synergy on it. Very easy to get this to proc, especially on something like a Gear Falcon's Hunter. And you have the other perks in the fourth column to give you some damage aspect to it, as well as destabilizing rounds. So like I said, we got destabilizing right here with those weapon kills, apply volatility, so it pairs with Repulsor Brace perfectly. But overall, I think it's easier to sometimes get it with your subclass instead of having destabilizing on. So this is just for that fun little ad clear build, if you will, creating a bunch of volatility, giving yourself HP with Repulsor Brace, but they have some great options on this as well. The first option is still Master of Arms right here. We get that damage increase from kills with any weapon, so we can get defeats with like Wither Horde. Switch onto this, we get that nice juicy damage increase because of Master of Arms, as well as kills with the weapon itself, so you can stack those together. Something like Subsistence with this, it just continuously goes together, giving you that nice little damage increase. So not as strong as it used to be, but still a very good perk. Surrounded, kind of the same thing with Threat Detector, can be hard to proc, but we get that juicy 35-40% damage increase to this weapon when we have those targets within close range. So this can get some juicy damage when you are in that horde mode, something like that with Onslaught. But it does get somewhat hard to proc, so that is why I do like having Master of Arms or destabilizing as well. But we do have this last one right here. I have been really loving this perk right here with Frenzy. Just gives us that 15% damage increase, 100 handling, 100 reload. So this feels pretty good on top of the reload speed. Like I've been saying, this is absolute trash, only at 28, 38, depending on your masterwork. But Frenzy gives us that nice damage increase across the board when we are just inside a combat. We don't have to get defeats, don't gotta be near enemies, anything like that. So a very good option for this in PvE. Lots of different options to go through. Moving us on to PvP side of things. Backup mag is what I would go with for that weapon mod. Gives us almost 40 inside of the magazine, so it's a nice little addition to what it usually is, around 30. So having this is a beautiful addition. For our masterwork, I'm going with the range on this, giving us a 62 in range, 64 in stability. Definitely like having the range stacked out as high as I can with this perk. Again, we got two options for barrels. First off, this is the small bore with stability range. If you are having a little trouble controlling the recoil on this, I would go with small bore because of that 7 stability, but we do have an option that gives us a little bit more range as well. You could go with that hammer forged right here that gives us that plus 10 to range, so it's a little increase, giving us a 65 in range. We do lose that stability, so totally up to you. I personally like small bore the best. Inside the second column, as always for PvP, we are going with a ricochet rounds, gives us that 10 to stability, 5 to range, and then it also can bounce off hard surfaces, so you can get some cheeky angles bouncing this around corners, off walls, stuff like that. Moving on to the bread and butter right here, we got ourselves Threat Detector. I think this is way easier to get procced inside of the Crucible, especially for 6s, so we get that stacks 2 stability, handling, and reload, which is very nice to have inside of the Crucible, especially when handling gets jacked up as high as it does. Can switch on and off of this very quickly, and it gets procced, like I said, way easier. Your second option is the dynamic sway reduction. Improves accuracy and stability while you continuously hold down the trigger, so you can see we get a little bit of stability every time the weapon shoots. So totally up to you for that stability aspect of it, but I personally like Threat Detector a little bit more than dynamic sway. Now last but certainly not least, in our fourth column, got a couple different options. Target lock, still very good on SMGs, even though it did get a little bit of a nerf. We get that damage increase when we are hitting our target, so I do think it is still very viable. Still feels like it slaps in all of my SMGs that I have it on, so I do really like this perk. Next on the list, we do got that Master of Arms. Like I said, not nearly as much of a menace as it was back in the day, but when we get defeats with this weapon or other weapons, it gives us the damage increase, so we can get a snipe, switch around, absolutely just tank another guardian because of the damage increase on this immediately, instead of having to ramp up something like target lock. But it is a very good perk still, even though it's not as good as it was back in the day. Last but certainly not released is Surrounded. Again, a little bit easier to get procced inside of the Crucible like threat detector, so we get that nice 35-40% damage increase when we are surrounded or have a couple enemies near us, which is way easier to get procced inside of the Crucible. So it's nice to have that little damage to go on, but when you aren't near enemies, definitely like target lock or Master of Arms way better. So this thing is a menace still inside of the Crucible, not nearly as good as it was, but it is still very good. I think for the PvE side of things, I would give it about a 4 because it has very good rolls on it, but we do have a lot of other SMGs that are very similar in my opinion. Master of Arms didn't really make it stick out that much to me, just because they did have to nerf it pretty heavy. But PvP side, I will say, not as good as I thought it was going to be, giving it a 3.75 out of 5. I really like Immortal way better. I would use Saira's Wrath, the Trials old SMG, over this one in my personal opinion, but I know some people have really been liking it, so totally an opinion of mine. But I think this is an average SMG overall inside of the game. So again, I appreciate all you guys coming back to the channel, supporting me. Make sure you slap that like button as well as the bell so you don't miss out on any of this content. Hit that subscribe button, helps me out a bunch, helps the channel out a bunch. So I just appreciate all you guys. I will catch you guys in the next one here on Monday, which is a hunter build for y'all for the Onslaught realm. I will catch you guys in that one. Peace.